So, hello, let's give it another try. Just tried it, but it didn't want to work with Instagram. Was a little bit stirry today. Let's see if we get Instagram working right now. That looks a little bit better. Yeah, sometimes technique works and sometimes not. That seems to work a little bit better. Very good. Finally. So for everyone who is already in the live itself, the first one are logging in. That's really nice. Let me know where you're streaming in from, where you're sitting today. I am sitting today in Germany, so for me it's already evening, and it's quite a temperature difference from home. Quite cold, and trying today to have a little nice background so that you don't see how cold it is. So let me know where you're streaming in from, and just wait for a couple of people to join us before we start with our official topic. I don't want to wait too long because I do see the replay, and it's always a little bit painful for everyone who watches the replay. So apologies for those who are watching afterwards, that we are chatting too much in advance. Good news, the wild sharks in Peru. Very good. Very good. Let me know where you're streaming in from. I had a couple of talks the last days also with some from Canada. There's even colder, so I think with my weather in Germany, I'm still quite good. Very good. So if you have already questions, I see questions already coming in. Put them in the chat. Find the chat, because as I said, this live is for you. So it's for you to ask questions. So I will answer all of those questions. So I see scuba diver beginner. So I will do all of those after the talk. So let's go straight in. From New York, very nice, thank you. Germany, hi, Ideal, very good. Very good. Then let's start, to not wait too long. So the topic today will be the different dive sites that we have in the Galapagos Islands. Which wildlife can you expect? Which temperatures you can expect? And I will concentrate with this live talk a little bit more on the routes that liveaboards are taking. So I will not concentrate as much on the day diving trips or day diving options. We will do that in a separate, maybe next Saturday, Sunday, when we're doing another live, to go a little bit in day diving trips. But today we will focus on a liveaboard. So when you're coming to the Galapagos, I highly recommend going for a dive liveaboard, because the experience of diving will be so different than if you're going day diving, obviously. And I want to help you right now to just figure out a little bit of route, because some of the places are often very, very similar in the most of the dive boats, but some of them are different. And then to find for you the best route that you want to take, to your dive dreams, where you want to focus on, it might help you to know what to expect. Let's start with the different regions. And I talked about that in the live, with the different currents, with the Humboldt current, which is cold water from Antarctica coming up, the Grumble coming from the western side, and have a lot of upwelling. They create, together with the Panama current from the north being warm, I would say 5 different bioregions. 3 of them we will pick today. So I will talk about each place and what wildlife you can expect. But the temperature will be obviously influenced, and also the species that you can see, because temperatures, obviously, sharks preferred, or certain shark species preferred warmer, molas and penguins obviously preferred colder. So different animals, different regions, different temperatures. So let's start with the most famous one, Wolf and Darwin, far, far in the north, which are the place if you want to dive with sharks, with the big hammerhead schools, with the mega schools where you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds just streaming by. If you want to do diving with whale sharks, so the Galapagos is one of the very few places where you actually can scuba dive with whale sharks, and not an experience where you have hundreds of people in the water, but where you have 15 other divers with you in the water, which is a quite intimate experience with whale sharks. We do have, so Wolf and Darwin are quite similar in the things that you can see. So Darwin has a higher chance to see whale sharks, as well as the hammerhead schools. Also Wolf, I would say, is sometimes even better in terms of hammerhead schools. However, both are really, really good. So the picture that you just see behind me, that I believe was taken actually in Darwin. But both places offer you to see the big schools of hammerheads in the time, and also my temperatures, which I'm giving you right now, the average temperatures will be in the cold season. So we have warm season, cold season. Cold season is June to October, November, and that is the peak dive season because there you have most of the animals in the region. So Darwin, very good for were sharks, for hammerheads. I did have once a huge giant eagle ray there. I mean, for whales, I had personally my best encounter last year. I had a humpback whale in the water, which was very curious and swam around. You have, sometimes pilot whales, you have false orcas, sometimes even orcas, you have tiger sharks, you have so many turtles. When you're looking into the reef and the corals, you have suddenly a lot of little, coral fish. You do have the big schools of big eye fish. You have tuna, a lot of big schools. I mean, Darwin personally is my favorite, as you probably guessed, because it's just so diverse what you can see, and it's just the amount of wildlife that you can see. And it's just, for me, I think every year there's at least one wow moment where it's just say, I never have experienced that before. And it just, yeah, it is my favorite place, Darwin. Wolf is very, very close to it. Not only from the location, but also from in terms of diving. You also have the chances to see a lot of hammerheads, a lot of Galápagos sharks, as well as up in Darwin. You have better chances to see a lot of eagle rays. So eagle rays are very good to see in a bigger group in wolf. We do have tiger sharks, we have turtles, we have in one area a huge coral garden, which is quite nice. So it's sharks, sharks. You have so many different shark species, which I think Darwin and wolf is very, very similar in terms of diving. You can see the only main difference I would say is that whale sharks are easier to spot up in Darwin because they are more frequently passing by, I would say. However, you still have the chance in wolf as well to see whale sharks. But wolf and Darwin are the places to dive. Temperatures nice and warm has often a lot of influence from the Panama Current. So the equatorial front is usually coming up to the islands, and I would say the average temperature is 24 degrees Celsius, which is 72 to 75 Fahrenheit. So that's the average temperature in the cold season. So quite nice, quite warm. Hammerheads like it warm, whale sharks like it warm. So that's more the area where they do hang out in those days. Most of the liveaboards spend up to 3 days, even sometimes 4 days, depending where you put your focus on. So 3 days are normal. Some of the vessels also have only 2 days, which I often then found a little bit too little, but most of the liveaboards have at least 3 days, so 1.5 days Darwin, 1.5 days wolf. Sometimes they have 1 day Darwin, 2 days wolf, but most of the liveaboards around 3 days. I think there's not a single liveaboard. So I've 10 liveaboards more or less in the Galapagos that you can choose from, and none of them is not going to Wolf and Darwin because it's obviously the places where you can see scenes like you just see behind me. For the western side of Isabela, I would be my next choice. So the western side is Ponte Vicente Roca in the north, and south we have Cape Douglas. Cape Douglas, very, very famous for the biggest marine iguana population on the island. So you're diving there at Fernandina. That's the most, I would say, active island in terms of volcanic action in the Galapagos Islands, and what the hotspot is basically around there. And you can dive with, feeding marine iguana. So you're being underwater, you're seeing the marine iguana munching away the algae. You have a lot of damselfish then protecting their area. They're even chasing, marine iguanas, and they will also take it up with you. So if you're putting your hand in the wrong area, they will certainly let you know and will make sure that you go away slowly. And there we're talking about, learned of behavior. We actually had damselfish that went for the mask of the divers because they learned if they're going straight at the mask, that divers react and go away, which is quite fascinating. And, it's just a fish. Anyway, what do we have? Marine iguanas. We have often sometimes penguins. We have so many turtles there, so many green sea turtles, which are as many of you probably know, endangered. So Galapagos is one of the places where you see a lot of green sea turtles, which are not very often seen in the rest of the world. So there are a lot there. Penguins, as I said, cormorants, sometimes you see them hunting there. Sea lions, fur seals, so much fun. There's so much going on, and you're only diving the first 5 meters, so it's not that cold. But yeah, Cape Douglas is pretty cool in terms of that. And then if you sometimes have a little bit more time, there's a deeper dive in Cape Douglas as well, where you see a couple of more things that are not as common. You have the horn sharks, we have the bullhead sharks, we do have the red-lipped batfish, we do have the torpedo rays, we have the bat rays, we have quite, unusual animals that you would not expect in the Galapagos because they're preferring more cold water. So colder water, temperature I will summarize after the other place. And the other place is a little bit up in the north. It's basically, when you look at Isabela, it looks like a seahorse, and it's at the nose of the seahorse is Punta Vicente Roca. And this place is just magic. It is a cleaning station. So there are 2 cleaning stations of molas, the Pacific sunfish, which is the biggest bony fish. And it's just the most bizarre looking fish, but fascinating at the same time. When you see how fast they can go with their little fins on top and on the bottom, it's quite remarkable to see them. So that's obviously a huge attraction for Punta Vicente Roca. But you also have a lot of sea lions, you sometimes fur seals, you do have a lot of turtles in the bay, a lot of old turtles. You have a lot of fish, school of fish. We do have the wall of Punta Vicente Roca. Just to look in between, the invertebrates are just incredible. You have sometimes seahorses, you have the bullhead Jackson's shark, you have the red-lipped batfish, sometimes a chance to see that. I mean, we often obviously focus on the mola, right? Because you want to see the big things, and that's most often the focus when you're going there. But if you take the time to look around, it's just, yeah, it's quite an incredible place, with also a lot of little stuff that you could look at if you would want to. The cormorant, you can see the flightless cormorant is obviously not flying. They're hunting underwater, and when you suddenly see a penguin, they're so fast when they're hunting. It's just incredible. Those places, so Cape Douglas as well as Punta Vicente Roca, are often very influenced from the Cromwell current. So a lot of cold water coming up from the deep, bringing nutrients up. So the average temperature on the surface, I would say, is around 18, 19 degrees, which is 64 to 66 Fahrenheit. And you do have very often a thermocline where you then go through, and then the visibility increases massively. However, the temperature decreases massively with that as well. So I think the average temperature that we had the last years down below the thermocline was around like 14, 15 degrees Celsius, which is 57 to 59 Fahrenheit. However, that is a place where most of the dive liveaboards go one day. But it's a mola underwater, to see penguins underwater, to see marine iguanas feeding underwater. It's something so unique that you cannot really get in many other places. I mean, marine iguanas you won't get in any other places because they're endemic to the Galapagos, but even molas are just so fascinating to see underwater. So it is worth taking one day of cold water, and often it's only one dive, because the mola dive will be the cold one, and the marine iguana one, as I said, it's in 5 meters. It's often actually quite warm, and I personally, I hate cold water, but believe me, I'm usually the last one out of the water because just so much going on. So western side of Isabela, most of the liveaboards going there one day. There are a few liveaboards that are not going to the western side of Isabela. So if molas, marine iguanas, penguins are on your radar and you really want to see them, make sure that you have a liveaboard that has Punta Vicente Roca for molas and Cape Douglas for marine iguanas. And then I think the third big are the Central Islands. Oh God, we are already 17 minutes. The Central Islands, we have Cousins Rock, I think, is the most common one where most of the liveaboards are going there. We often see eagle rays there. We had big schools of golden rays there. Sometimes we're lucky to have seahorses there. We do have sometimes frogfish there. A lot of sleeping sea turtles, white-tip sharks, a lot of little cuttlefish, the redfish, that's quite nice to see. And more smaller things, I would say. However, I mean, there are really good chances to see, as I said, rays as well. On the Central Islands, I also want to mention that a couple of liveaboards going to the eastern side of Isabela, for example, Cape Marshall or Roca Blanca, which are very good for giant manta rays. So giant manta rays are not as easy always to spot in the Galapagos. They're not as interactive as in other places. So they're more shy in the Galapagos Islands, so you don't see them very often. But Cape Marshall as well as Roca Blanca would be very good places for diving with giant manta rays. Otherwise, yeah, Central Islands is really a lot of sea turtles, a lot of sea lions that you often see, and very playful, a lot of schools of fish that we can see, barracudas, schools of barracudas that we often see, almaco jacks that we quite often have in Cape Marshall. Yeah, and a lot of, I mean, I love Cape Marshall for me a lot because also of the topography underwater. You have a lot of little up corals, and when there's a lot of plankton, they're coming all out even in the daytime, and it's just beautiful to see. It looks like a really beautiful garden with flowers, and yeah, so giant manta rays would be Cape Marshall. Average temperature, Cassin, Cape Marshall, so the area around the Central Islands is around 20 to 22 degrees. I would say, yeah, 20, 22 degrees in the cold season, which is 68 to 72 Fahrenheit degrees. So that are the main parts. And the Central Islands, most of the liveaboards have their check dive, obviously, there. And then you have 2, sometimes 3 days in the Central Islands. So places are Cousins Rock, North Seymour, Baltra, Cape Marshall, Roca Blanca. So they're different places, and they're kind of offering all the same, with the exception Cape Marshall and Roca Blanca do have giant manta rays as well. I mean, again, it's an ocean, you know, every place offers certain things that you might see because the encounters are more frequent. It does not encounter those in other places. Or like, for example, in Darwin, it's not as common that we see a humpback whale swimming by, but it can happen. In the day diving spots, or when you're doing your check dive, maybe that's a good example. On your check dive, sometimes you see nothing, and sometimes you have already hammerheads and rays and schools of fish there. It always depends on the day and they're coming by, because the nice thing is that it's untouched, so nothing is fed, so no sharks are fed underwater. They are on their route, so we are not interfering with them, we observing them. And I do love that the Galapagos, they are a marine reserve, they're protected, as you know, and that makes it so much more magical. You cannot predict it. The chances are very, very high that you see most of what you want to see in the Galapagos. However, it's still nature, so we not always, for example, see a whale shark or a giant manta ray. We do very often, but not always. So it is always, it's nature. So it will happen if it's supposed to happen. Routes, as I said, 3 days, usually most of the liveaboards spending up in the north, in Wolf and Darwin, which are the places. Some liveaboards going to the western side for molas, marine iguanas, Cape Douglas, Cape Marshall, Cape Douglas and Punta Vicente Roca, so cold side. And then most of the liveaboards spending time around the main islands in places like Cape Marshall and Roca Blanca for manta rays, or smaller things like Cousin, where we have then turtles, rays, white-tip sharks, and things like this. So it's not always the same trip. So you can a little bit decide. So sometimes I hear the fear of being very, very cold. It is mainly the western side. So if you're worried about that, look that you have a trip that maybe spends up to 4 days in Wolf and Darwin. There are there where you do not go to the western side if you're very afraid of cold things. If you want to have the most variety, then look for those who have all of those places, all these different regions in it to cover all the ticks that you want to have. And if you have questions where, okay, can you please repeat again, where was the best place for manta rays? You either rewatch the replay or you just ask me and write me a message, and I will give you the places where the chances to see those are the highest. Yes, clothing, I would say now it's time for questions. And before I probably go to questions, I also, if things like the live you, I highly would appreciate if you share it with friends if they often have questions, because when you're coming to the Galapagos, it's sometimes, I think, overwhelming in information that you can get. And sometimes it's very hard to decide, okay, which liveaboard, even if it's just 10 different vessels, but there are 10 different itineraries. And sometimes it's very hard to navigate through. So if you find, dives like this very, very useful, I would be very happy if you give us a like and if you just share it. So let's start with the question as I promised. Oh, today we have quite a few questions. That's nice. So let's go. So I can't read it there. I am a scuba diver beginner. Do you advise Galapagos a good entry? I did my first dive in Cozumel last year. Thanks. Risa, I do not recommend. If you're a new diver, the Galapagos will be not as enjoyable for you. So the requirement for liveaboards, for example, is a minimum of 50 dives and advanced open water, for the simple reason that you have sometimes currents, you have sometimes colder water, and the conditions can change underwater. So it's easier if you are a comfortable diver with a good buoyancy and already very happy with your equipment. Because if you're not, you're more likely to actually don't see what is happening around you. And if you're coming to the Galapagos all the way and paying that money, I would recommend have the experience, because it will enhance your enjoyment and obviously your safety. So no, I would not recommend Espira. I think there are other places where you can gain experience, and when you then have a little bit of experience, then join to Galapagos, because then it's also sure that you enjoy it. Restore providing white sharks are very good. Lima Lima. Lot of Peru. Peru is very cold. Thank you for all the. I would appreciate not. Thank you. Hi, I love tour work. Is mentioned being unique. Thank you very much, Diego. Nice comment. No more fishing, no hunting, no more dead sea animals, fishes in Peru, no more dead sharks. Thank you for the comment in Peru. It also obviously is for Ecuador and all other places. I think many organizations such as ours, we are trying to protect sharks in general. I'm personally working with the Galápagos Shark project, where all of our profits also from these dive tours that we're operating are going to work on conservation, to work on extension of marine protected areas such as the Galápagos. We were included, or the data of the Galápagos Shark project was included for extending the marine reserve of the Galápagos, which is very exciting. And really obviously helps the sharks. They don't stop obviously at borders, but as more ocean we can make protected, as more safe the ecosystem stays, and basically our base to live, because we're depending on the ocean. So okay, let's see if we have some more questions. Yeah, so let's see. Mostly interested in hammerhead sharks diving July or August. Bruce, that's a difficult question. So I would say for hammerhead schools, scientists or studies show that the hammerheads are all year round in the Galapagos Islands. They tend to move away between March and June more frequently. So you do see still hammerheads, but not in the big schools. For the big schools where most of the people are coming from, so that what you see behind me, the best time is July to November, I would put it, because there you usually have most of the nutrients in the water. You have to tend to get more gathering of hammerheads streaming by, because they're feeding at night. So when you're looking at the studies, what is happening in the Galapagos is in the daytime they're usually cruising around the island, so Wolf and as well as Darwin, and in the nighttime they disperse and then going out into the open ocean for feeding. However, it obviously still means that if there's food around and if there's more opportunity to feed, then there will be around. However, if you have the choice between July and August, both months are very, very good. I would say July throughout November, the chances are basically the same. Consider that high season is July, August, September, with then October, end of September, October becoming colder sometimes. So the influences of the currents in an average year tending to get a little bit stronger. So sometimes September and October tend to be a little bit colder than July and August. But if you choose between July and August, both months are really, really good for hammerhead shark diving. So there's not one better than the other. So both are really, really good. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. Yeah, let me know if you have any other question. Let's have a look in Facebook. Yeah, not so many questions today. Very good. No, so if you have any other questions, as you know, I will post the replay of this live. So if a nice question comes up and you just need an answer, just write as many as possible. Give me always a day or two until I cover everything. If you're very interested in, planning a trip, don't be afraid. Just reach out, write me an email, WhatsApp, or just via social media. That's fine as well. I'm trying to cover everything at the moment. I'm on land, even if I'm in Germany. I am still available. I will head out end of February for a couple of tours where I'm on the board a ship where it's a little bit more difficult, but use the time that I'm here to ask me questions because I'm really happy to help you. Bruce, wonderful. September to November, even better for me, colder. I'm not worried about, you're from Canada. Yeah, most of the Canadians, they won't have any problems because most of the diving that you do actually in Canada is way more challenging. Yeah, with the cold and the hood and everything. So yeah, usually the people from Canada, the divers are really, really good divers. So yeah, September to November is very good for hammerheads. If you want to combine it to see whale sharks, and we do have the adult big whale sharks, then I would make it a little bit slightly earlier. So the whale sharks is a good season from June to October, generally speaking. And so yeah, in the months July, August, September, you have the highest chances to see basically everything that is in the Galapagos Islands. The main reason why we do our citizenship or expeditions in those months. So that's basically a dive liveaboard where you have on top a shark scientist traveling with you, talking about shark research, but also giving you all the tools that you need to support conservation, because there's so much that we can do as divers. We can identify whale sharks, we can identify manta rays, we can identify molas, we can identify even tiger sharks. So they just developed a program that also should now work for tiger sharks. So it's quite incredible what we as divers can do. And it doesn't matter what you study, what you work, it's just, having a camera and taking the time to show the video that you took and look if you can get an ID. Or counting, we do have citizen science programs where we try to sometimes the hammerhead sharks, the Galápagos sharks, just to get a better idea. And that's maybe also a good thing. Everyone can download the Shark Count app. So if you're going on Shark Count on your app store looking for Shark Count, there you actually see all the reportings from all the divers that participated. And then you can see which months hammerheads were reported, or whale sharks reported, or Galapagos sharks reported, or tiger sharks. So you can go in yourself, play around, and you can see, okay, maybe last week, yesterday, maybe who reported a whale shark or a tiger shark. So you can go in, play around, and when you're going to the Galapagos, take the app with you because you have your phone with you, and then just put your encounters in as well, because you then can help research and conservation, because we're getting more information, and as more information we get, as more questions we can ask. We're getting a little bit more information about what hammerheads are doing, what is the aggregate in each month and each phase. So there you can play around as well. That's a good point. So any more question? Oh, thank you very much, Lisa. Very good. I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. It's now half an hour in. That's perfect. Thank you so much for joining. As I said, if it was helpful, save it and share it with friends so they can have that information as well. And if you have any more questions that you just didn't come up right now or come back into your mind later, don't be afraid. Send me a message, WhatsApp, Messenger, or email. I am available. I wish you all a nice day, a nice evening, depending where you're from. And see you next week, which might be actually Saturday this time, because I do hope to maybe squeeze in some skiing while I'm in Germany. So we might do another live, and maybe we talk about day diving versus liveaboard, to talk a lot, because that question I get quite a bit as well, because that might be something that you can do as a beginner diver as well. With that, wish you all a nice evening and good day. Bye bye.